Hey everyone, welcome back to Painted Studio. Maury Curtis Dunbar, the owner, CEO, and massive mess maker in the studio. We are back for our second live today. Earlier we did a little bit of fun with some heat transfer vinyl adhesive designs and t-shirts, and then we moved on to creating ornaments that we're going to eventually coat with glass bead gel. So I'm going to flip this down. We're going to kind of get right into it. So after I left you all, we took the rest of all of these pieces of paper that we had set aside to be mounted on boards, did the mounting and let them dry. So now we're just going to take them all on a piece of cardboard and we're going to trim off all that extra paper. And this isn't a hard job. This is like 5 minutes worth of work. You're just going to take an X-Acto knife, run it along the edges of the boards. Don't slice open your hands. Ask me, because I've done it. I was in college and I had hurt my wrist for the first time, had a brace on my wrist, was cutting a board and took the knife and went right like that. Cut my thumbnail in half, cut half of my fingertip off. That was more than 35 years ago, and it's still, like, I still don't have any feeling from it. So pay attention to what you're doing with your knives. Okay, so that one's trimmed. That one didn't want to cut right because it's on a little bit of a funny spot on this board. Now some of these may be a little damper still than I want. I'll find it shows in the way the paper cuts. If the paper doesn't slice off easy, then the paper's still a little damp. And I got some damp spots. I can live with it. I'll survive it. Another one done. I don't like the way that edge cleaned up. Sometimes I go too fast and I get sloppy, and I need to rein myself back in and clean up my own messes. There we go. Obviously, I did not cut these before I went live. I'm doing it on the live, so you get the idea of the entire process. And I know some people make things one at a time. I have never really been good with that because at some point things have to dry. So I need something else to work on while something's drying. So I tend to do things in batches. So, you know, if I'm gonna foil a t-shirt, I usually don't just foil one, I have like 4. If I'm going to work on a Christmas ornament, I'm not working on one, I'm working on like half a dozen. Yes, and honestly, this is probably the smallest amount that I work on, is at like 5 or 6. Because especially for something small like this, I'm producing a lot because I'm planning to sell them. So I tend to do things in bulk. But that comes from a lot of years of doing this kind of stuff for a job. If you're not doing this as a profession, you're doing it as a hobby, there's no reason to do it in bulk unless you're planning on giving it to a lot of people, or you have an entire decor lined up that matches this. Now, this was a little damp here, so I shredded the edge a little bit when I cut. You know what? I don't care. It won't show by the end. By the time I'm done with this, you won't even know that that was a bad edge there. So this stuff could have dried a little longer. Paper's still a little damp on some of them that I'm cutting through. You know, the last ones that I applied the set coat clear to are the ones that are still a little damp now. So they're giving me a little challenge with the cutting. And of course, I've got to push it by doing it because we're doing lives. So that always adds a little pressure. So y'all can see me screw it up on camera. Because you've never seen that before. Oh gosh, God forbid you ever see me make a mistake on the camera. Oh no. All right, so we have all of these little ones cut out. And you can see sometimes some of the edges are coming up. All that you have to do to fix that, let me see if I've got the right brush. I have all kinds of brushes, and I have junky brushes and I have good brushes. Each brush has a purpose. Sometimes the junky brush is started out as a really good brush and finished up as a junky brush, which is the case I think with this one. So if I have lifting edges, I'm just going to go back with a little set coat clear along the edge, smooth it down with my finger. I just want to make sure that everything's bonded along the edges because I don't want them to lift later on. So I'm just going to go up where it lifted, shove a little set coat clear in there. Smooth it back down with my finger. And I will come over the top with it with the set coat clear on the top as well as underneath. Why? Because it penetrates the paper and makes a better bond. Now, you always see me dipping out of the buckets. That's because I'm the only one who generally works out of the buckets. Even when I'm teaching a class, the students don't dip into the buckets, I pour out. But when I'm doing small stuff like this, I often don't pour it out because I lose more in the pouring out and then pouring back into the containers than I end up using on the actual project. But if you're going to do what I'm doing, you need to make sure your brushes are clean because every time you dip into a bucket with something on your brush that shouldn't be in there, you're contaminating your materials. So basically do what I say, not what I do. Right, that's burnished down. We're going to get them all sticking down nicely. I got a little cranky edge right there that does not want to stay stuck. And that happens all the time. You just got to work it until it sticks. And eventually it does. That one is pretty well adhered on all edges. I just want to clean up that edge right there where I had shredded it a little bit. Because not only can you clean up the edge by painting it, you just moisten some of this back on your finger and burnish the edge and it softens it because what it's doing is still softening the paper. Just because this is dry to the touch, and this is, I want to share this, just because it's dry to the touch and I can paint another layer on it, doesn't mean that if I came back with it like I just did, you know, an hour later, that this isn't still curing. So fresh moisture on top of it penetrates and helps create a better seal. I see Joy said something. I missed the beginning. Where did you get those awesome images? Oh, the images, these, I just printed these. I went online, Googled, what did I click? Google royalty-free clip art, meaning that these images are free for anybody to use, and I just printed them. So that's really all I did and then I have Photoshop on my computer, which most people do now, but any photo editing program will allow you to adjust the size of the image to fit your surface. And that's all I did. I just printed this with a regular old inkjet printer from royalty-free clip art online. I did a Google search, said royalty-free Halloween clip art. So a lot of the images are going to be vintage because the age of them themselves allows them to be royalty-free. Let's get that all down. So we're gonna work on these in a minute. I just need to get these edges all secured down. Here's my little bat. Now, as I mentioned earlier on the last video I did doing this, it would make more sense. And notice I went from the brush to my fingers. That always happens. It makes more sense to drill these for the hanging holes, because we'll put holes here that we can put ribbons through in the corners of each of these. So, but you want to do that before you apply the glass beads, but after you do the painting. Why? Because then you're not, first of all, you get all your image completed on here, and then you can drill through and clean up the hole, as opposed to putting the hole in and then trying to clean up a painting or around what could be a rough edge. If I do this now, after I've painted everything, I'll have, and this is cured with set coat, I'll have a cleaner drill through with the holes. Yes, Joy, it's so easy to get. Seriously, just do a Google search, but make sure to include the words royalty-free so that you don't get stuck using something that you didn't have the real ability to use, you know, because if it's not royalty-free, you're not supposed to be using it without paying a licensing fee. Now, this one, this is a piece that I clipped. It's an illustration I clipped out of a book, and this has been sitting around since the last time. So we're gonna do some fun stuff with these. I wanna set that aside since that's still drying. And the next thing we're going to do, because the last time I did the images, you could see them no problem, but I really wanted to punch them up a little bit now that I've gotten the basic technique done. So I'm gonna have to bang this for a second. Sorry, had to loosen the cap. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our Vivid Ultra Metallics Multi-Surface Acrylic Medium in Gloss, and we're going to use our Primary Elements pigments, and we're going to paint some detail in here. We're going to zhuzh it up. So the first thing I'm going to do, and this is, you can use any acrylic medium with these pigments, but I happen to have this one in the studio. We carry this, it's meant for these pigments, so might as well use the product that it's designed for. And we may not get to putting any bead gel on here today, simply because if I paint all of these, they're gonna have to dry. All right, so I've obviously filled all of this with the gloss enamel. So now I'm gonna start putting some colors in here to work with our images. Whew. What color is that? That's Lemon Drop. I think that's a little too lemony for what we've already got in here. My biggest challenge is I don't have a lot of greens here in the studio, but I might have a few extra greens floating around in a backup. And if I need it, I will then bring in that one. There we go. We got Mandarin Citron. We're looking for Halloween-y, autumnal kind of colors. So we've got the Mandarin Citrus here. Put that in there. And these colors, when they dry to beautiful metallics. Very rich looking. And you'll see that even in the mixtures that we put together here. So that's a rich yellow. Let's see, we gotta have little, oops, little flake of something else flew in there from the bottom of the jar. We're going to use a little, what is this? Orange peel. And I'm using about 1/8 of a teaspoon. Now, I will tell you right now, I tend to hyperpigment stuff like this. I don't like weak, wishy-washy colors. So I'm probably putting more pigment in here than it really needs. And sometimes when this dries, the pigments will float to the top of the medium, and I have taken my projects and put them underwater and rinse them off to wash off the extra pigments. That doesn't bother me to do. If I stop over pigmenting stuff, maybe I wouldn't have quite that problem. But I'm sorry, I can only change so much. Okay, this is ginger spice, which is going to be an orangey golden color, which is really pretty. That's a pretty color. Let's see, I want to take some burnt umber. So I'm going to do half a palette in sort of warm autumnal kind of colors with some kind of acid green accents. And then the Christmas ones are going to be a little, obviously, more Christmas focused. Okay, so I've put burnt umber in here. 4 colors there, and I think what I really want to do is put in a little hot cinnamon, which is where we are. That's Loving Kisses. That's burnt umber. Hot cinnamon, there we go. Hot cinnamon is a weird color. It looks very brown in the jar, but it blooms very red, but it's a brownish. It's a red that has a little brown in it. See, you can see it's turning very, very red. That's what's cool about these pigments, is they don't always, once you got them in the mixture, they don't really look an awful lot like what you'd expect them to look like. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm gonna reach into my private stash for green. Telling me maybe I need to bring a green in. Okay, we're going to work with key lime. Years ago, when this company first started selling these products, they sold them in these little tiny containers. Yeah, they are a pain. But I did need this little bit of green in that color. So that's key lime color. Let's see. We should probably throw some emerald in one of these. So here's my fall palette, sort of. We'll have transitions with the greens and the red. This color is emerald. I know it looks very, very blue, but it's actually green. Make sure I grab the right one. Yep, that's emerald. Sorry, I just muted to make sure I got the right. That would have been so bad if I got the wrong one after saying it's green and it came out bright blue. Okay, there's the green. And just like that hot cinnamon, it doesn't look like the same color once you've added liquid to it. And these pigments are designed only for water-based products. Do not try to put them in solvent or oil. You won't be happy. Not get the result you want. All right, so we're going for Westminster Gray. Because I wanted sort of a pewtery color. pigments in there. I think I need a pearl and maybe a blue. I don't think I have pearl over here, so let me see what I've got in my other stash. This is actually going to be a little more silver, I think. Maybe I should just get some mica powder and pearl and put that on there. Who knows? Well, we're going to try it with what I got in front of me, so what can I say? That's just not going to be the right one, though. I am going to go for some pearl mica powder in here because I need a pearly white no matter what I do. None of the pigments I have is going to do it because I don't have this in a white pigment. So I'm going to take a little pearl mica powder from Sep Leaf, mix it in here. Considering that I see a little pink, a little bit of the red pigment blooming, who knows? I might actually be creating a pink instead of a pearl. It is actually a little pinky. So I got that little bit of red pigment that floated into this. Can these pigments be used in other things like epoxy? These pigments specifically are for water-based products. So you can add it to the bead gel, the gel mediums, anything like that. You want something translucent because otherwise you lose the metallic of it. Anything like texture medium will, the sparkliness will disappear. It needs a translucent base. These are not, however, designed for epoxy. We have pigments for epoxy. They're called art resin pigments, or resin art, R-E-Z-I-N, resin art pigments. They're made by the same company. They have the same beautiful metallics to them. I think we're going to use a little bit of Blue Flame. And you'll get gorgeous results from them as well, but those are made for epoxy, and that's what you want to pigment the epoxy with, not something like this. The mica powder you can add to epoxy. It floats, the particles float nicely on it and add a nice bit of metallic, but they don't dissolve in it, so you won't have a pigmented epoxy from mica. The pigments for mica, for epoxy dissolve in epoxy. The pigments for water-based dissolve in water-based paint. So here's my palette. It's ready to go. I'm going to move this messy tray of stuff out of the way. To my then very messy plastic that's underneath it, but I don't care about the plastic being messy. All right, so let's take this cute little guy. So I've got lots of water-based paint brushes here, and I do keep a roll for water-based brushes and for solvent and oil-based paints because they're not able to be crossed over. If you have a paintbrush that you've been using for oil-based paints and then you suddenly try to use it for water-based, you could be contaminating it with stuff. So yeah, you can see, I mean, this is years of collecting brushes, so don't be surprised that somebody suddenly shows up with a whole lot of brushes. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to dip into this deeper orange peel color, and I want to come in here and brush along the edge here. I could probably use a bigger brush here, but this is the first one I grabbed, so that's what we're using. And really, I'm just adding a little bit of metallic to the details that are already there. Because once this dries, that next level of color will be really, really fresh on here, and it'll come through the beads and it'll make this image read better. Take a little bit of our ginger spice, and we're going to put it over here. Ooh, this is a terrible brush. I forgot to check and see if these bristles actually spread. This is what happens when you get old brushes. That bristle clump is the bristles are not separate bristles. It's brushing like a trowel, like a solid piece. Well, that goes in there. That tells me that one needs to get cleaned, that I blew that cleaning job. Let me find a brush that's the right size. That'll work. How do I know where to put what color? Well, first of all, it's already colored, so I'm just going from gradation of colors. So like this ginger peach is a little orangey yellower, and so it'll fit in certain areas, and then we go into the orange peel, and it's darker, so I use it wherever the darker shadowy colors might go, and just use it to enhance. And I'm not going to paint the whole thing. What I'm doing is giving it a little extra metallic. Wash my brush out. If I wanted to paint the whole thing, then I've got a wet brush in here, and I might come back in with some yellow around the rest of the face. But I made it thin so it's more of a wash, because again, I don't want to lose anything that's under this. So I kind of punched up my colors a little bit. Okay. Clear that out. Now I'm going to take a little bit of this pearly color, and I want to brush it in a corner just to see how it reads. All right, that actually reads very white, even though it's got a little pinky in it. So I'm going to use that to highlight the cap right there and along the shoulders there. And I can even go back in here along the sleeve. And let's go a little bit into the eye here. Let's take another small brush, go back in. Let's go back in here with the eye. I'm going to do a little tiny bit into the hair. And all I'm doing is I'm using the already printed image as my guide. I am not looking to create something new. Just enhance what's there, because especially right here in the face where it's all a bunch of neutrals, it will disappear into sort of a beigey blob under the bead gel, and I want to make sure that doesn't happen. Let's take a little bit of the red, since we've got a little bit of a red mouth. Take a little bit of both these colors, really white them and wash them out. Thin that up here. So I just want to put a little hint of that on the cheek. Take the nose. So you can see I haven't, sorry, there's a notification on my screen. I haven't done an insane amount of stuff to this. All I really did was just kind of punch it up. So there's a few spots down here. I'm gonna come in here. For example, I wanna get the eyes on the pumpkin. Come in here in the mouth. And it's just this little touches of stuff that really can make it wonderful. Now, I can leave it like this, or I could come back in here and do some detail. I think this one, for the moment, I'm gonna leave like that. I'm gonna grab a little bit of color just to kind of enhance this spot here, and that's kind of a little bit of light blue, but that's got a little green in it. So I'm taking that pigment color right there and taking that little bit of green, mushing it together and coming back in here. Believe it or not, there are little hints of blue in the hair. It's the way it printed. So now I've kind of punched that up, and we're gonna let it dry, and then the bead gel will go over it. So now we're gonna go into something a little different. This is very, very dark. This is an image that I cut out of a book and mounted I did this ages ago. And there's little shadow trees in the background, so I want to kind of play with some of that. So the first thing I want to do is kind of punch up the little dots that are I wish I could get in at it finer, but these were literally, the design idea behind it is very stippled, meaning something was taken and gone. And that's very hard to imitate with a brush, especially on an image this small. So I'm going in here, and I'm really just working to pop up the contrast of the black, the white, and the gray. So those are the only colors I'm working in here. So I've kind of got an Arabian Nights theme feeling with this. I think that it might have been a similar story out of the fairy tale book. I honestly don't remember which story this came from. You know, I did this a couple weeks ago, and I'm lucky I remember what I did this morning. So I'm just coming in here and trying to punch up the white a little bit, so that when I put the bead gel over it, we've got some nice contrast showing. Because right now it's a very very muddy, very dark, a little hard to read. So how's everybody's day been? My car has been repaired. I got a gift from my friend Martin in the mail of a killer spice. We both love Ethiopian food, and it's not easy to get into where the Ethiopian restaurants are here in Chicago, and I guess there's really not much of Ethiopian food down in Florida. So the two of us have been just missing going to Queen of Sheba in Louisville. That was like my go-to place to go and have Ethiopian food at least once whenever I'd go to Kentucky to teach. All right, so I think I've kind of handled most of that. So then the next area in here is the trees, and I'm gonna go for those in the gray. That's too dark. So I'm gonna take some of this gray here and some of the pearl. Mix together for a lighter silvery color. Let's try that. That should read better. Oh, that's much better. And this is sort of stippled in, so I'm just kind of tapping this in here as opposed to brushing it smoothly, because then it's in keeping with the style. This is such a very dark illustration, but it's got such really wonderful details if you can give yourself a second to find them. Now see, if I weren't on camera, I'd have a book or a movie on, or some music. I'd be singing if it was music, which is something you should be grateful that there is no music on. What I'm doing here is, it's very hard to see in the illustration, but there is, oops, I just stuck my finger right in there. That was genius. I'm so smart. It's amazing they let me out in public. So first thing I'm doing is kind of going in. It's very hard to see, but there is actually trees right in this area, and they're very, very dark. So what I'm doing right now is I'm kind of tapping in the spots that are highlighted, and then I'll go back with the darker gray to finish in the detail, or finish in the whole background shape. But I want to let that dry for a minute. All right, so we have this carpet that they're kneeling on that's striped. Again, I'm not trying for perfect. I just need to make sure it pops a little more than it's going to do right now. Now I can go into color here. I am going to do a little bit of color, not a lot, but I think I'm going to go with a little blue, because we have these wonderful feathers in their turbans, and I'd like to play that up a little bit. Let's see if I like how that looks. If I don't like it, I'll just paint over it with something else. And actually, I do want it a little more pearly, a little less intensely blue. So I'll just brush some of that over there. This takes it down without losing the metallic. It's very nice. All right, so I've got that one there, and wipe that off. We're gonna go green on this one, dark green here. Take a little bit of the white again. Come in and soften. There we go. Now, he's got details on his cuff, so I'm transposing the color used from this one to that sleeve, and then I'm going to do the same with the blue and the pearl on his sleeve, which is a little different right there. It keeps the color story uniform. And then, let's see. I'm trying to think of what I want to see right there. I think I'm just going to take some of this gray. Do is do the shoes. Thing is a little bit of a gray wash in the back of these trees. And take a look and see if it needs anything else to pop out a little more. Sorry, I got to turn it my way just so I can see it. And I got a little detailing to work in right here. And I'm going to stick with it in the light color because this is just some leaves and branches and stuff down here. But it needs to be marked because otherwise it looks like part of the railing that I forgot to paint. And that's not the look I was going for. So there's that there. And then I just want to do a little something with these tiles. Just so we can enhance the pattern. And so what this does is it gives a focus to the design, helps your eye know where to look, and then we've got our details pop just a little more. Now this is going to be a very dark one. We'll see how it comes out. All right, one last one. We're going to work on this one. This is going to be just a silly fun. Very lighthearted, very different from the other one simply because the pattern, the design is so simple. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more so you can see what I'm doing a little easier. All right, so the first, I think, is going to be to take some of this key lime and we're just going to come in and make that hat color pop. Now this one is so clean and simple that I could pretty thoroughly repaint the whole thing just to make it pop with no problem and not upset the design integrity. And we're going to do some of that. So I am going to take this ginger spice. I'm going to get a little water in here on my brush. We're going to do the dress. I'm kind of a brush strokes person, meaning that I'm really aware of how my final brush strokes can affect how things look. So I'll come back and move everything around until I have brush strokes that I consider acceptable. Because I have all these lines going in one direction, I don't want stuff brushing this way, it would look funny. I want them all going to enhance that long, lean look of this particular design. Okay, I think I'm going to take a little bit of the orange peel, which is a little darker orange, and we're going to go on the pumpkin with it. Sorry folks, I need a sip of beverage here. Now, overpainting printed images is nothing new. Honestly, I've been doing it for years, long before I knew anything about stuff like bead gel, for the simple reason I do stuff like this, mount it, and then once you apply it and it's glued, maybe the colors ran a little bit before, and I just would want to make it more. You know, it would look good. I wanted it to look great, so I'd come back and paint back into the images, overpaint it, repaint it, whatever I felt that it needed to get it to where I want it to be. Okay, so now I have that all painted. The next thing is I need a very fine brush because all these outlines are also in shades of orange, but I need to clean them. I need to clean them up, and so they needs to be a fine brush. Sorry folks, when I'm doing really fine line work, I stop talking. I need to actually pay attention. So what is everybody binge watching these days? My husband and I are back binge watching West Wing again. I think we've watched it, the whole series, through twice now. But we both really, I mean, the writing is excellent. The humor is very funny. So we enjoy that one. All right, so we're gonna pull a little brown in now. I know all these images are black, but we're going to go with them with dark burnt umber because that's going to read really well with this coloration. And yes, I will paint all the kittens and all the bats on the skirt. Why? Because then it looks complete. And I also do all the lines in the skirt once I get to that part. Here, kitty, 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 kitty. Don't hate me for it, but in general, I am not a cat person. I appreciate how beautiful they are, but my pets are dogs. Probably because I appreciate the goofy factor with it, because it kind of matches my goofy factor. And we're almost there. I know watching me paint little tiny lines while I'm not talking is not exactly like Emmy Award winning viewing, or whatever the award would be for watching something on Facebook or YouTube. All right, let's get those lines cleaned. So you can see I'm not changing anything, I'm just intensifying it because it will read better under the bead gel this way. Now if you don't want to use metallics, you can use regular artist colors to do this. You know, gosh, goodness knows, I have tons of those stashed somewhere right now. I'm not sure where in here they are, but they're here. I haven't had to pull them out since I moved into the studio, so I don't really remember where they are at the very moment. Okay, anything that's dark or black looking, I'm using the burnt umber metallics on. A little, my brush is too full to get into those eyes. Okay, that got done. I just have a little bit of stuff here and there, and that one gets called finito. I'm gonna take a little bit of this, pop that white. Excuse me, a little highlight on her arm and her shoulder. And I think, you know, we just popped it up a little. That's all we're doing, is intensifying the colors so that when we put the bead gel over it, it reads better. Now, this one's gonna read really well because it printed with really rich colors. So I'm gonna pull the bead gel out and we're going to do a basic bead gel covering of this. Now, I'm gonna tell you right now, I should be drilling the holes right now. So I don't feel like pulling the drill out though. So I have the option. I can cover this with bead gel now and show you how that works, or I can put it away and drill it tomorrow. So what am I gonna do? I'm gonna make my own life harder, and we're just gonna put the bead gel on there. Hang on just a sec. very specifically, this image, I am doing literally nothing to enhance it. I have applied it, I have sealed it, it's done. So I'm going to take our Artsyville bead gel, which is what this is what it looks like. Let me get my piece of plastic out of the way. Artsyville bead gel looks like this. It's white because the acrylic binder is white when wet. It will dry clear. Grab a painted spread. And I use old hotel room keys. You know, if you've got expired credit cards, use those. If you have like your old Blockbuster card, use that. And all I'm doing is spreading this on here, the thickness of a single bead. And if you look at this, I'm not scraping this on, I'm buttering it on. I'm using this because it's flexible so the beads don't go flying across the room as I trowel it. You can just cut a piece of stiff the only thing I don't suggest is a metal trowel for this, because the stiff trowels will make those beads go flying. They will, it's too stiff, so they go ting, ting, all over the place when you're trying to trowel it on, as opposed to when you use something a little softer and it just butters onto the surface. I'm not trying to scrape because I don't want any of these drag marks. I am buttering because I want to have it smoothed on here. And will probably have spots that I have to come back and clean up and redo in the morning, because I'm doing this instead of having it taped off like I should, you know, all the things that I should be doing. Listen to me what I should be doing so you learn it, because I'm tired right now. It's late, 7 o'clock. I don't feel like taping anything. Shocker. So moving this to around the edges. So I've got plenty of product on here now. Now I just have to smooth it. And if you have taped off spots that you're doing with this stuff, pull the tape as soon as you're done spreading, because if you don't, the tape becomes a permanent part of your finish. It's embedded in this stuff. The only way to cut through it, get it out, is cut through it with a knife. That's a big pain in the ass through bead gel. Oops, sorry, it is late. I just cursed. I apologize. Said the A word. Normally I say that only when I'm here by myself. So certain hours of the day it could set a lot. Okay, scraping off my edges. Okay, so you're gonna look at that and go, gosh, everything just disappeared. It's all white. That dries clear. I guarantee you it dries clear. How do I know? I'm going to show you. Because these that I did, I don't know, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, looked just like that. Oops, I stuck my edge in there. Hang on a second. Because I am so smart and I'm looking at the screen and realizing I haven't zoomed back out. So, I gotta find a place to set that. Let me zoom back out. So, this is what this and this and this all looked like when it was drying. I promised you, it dries very clear so you can see. And these images I did not do any underpainting on. So this was the one that showed me I wanted to do a little underpainting because everything sort of blended flat. This was the one that showed me I could do what I needed to do. So I'm very happy with these. This, by tomorrow, will be 90% clear. I'm gonna look up. Did I go in all the same direction with the bead gel? No. I manipulated the bead gel until the surface was as smooth as possible. So it got all directions. Ooh, bad hair. The hair. I've got a fan blowing behind me and it's doing funny things to my hair. So this is going to dry. You won't see the directions. I could have it, you know, all kinds of directions. The one thing I wanted to do though was make sure it was relatively smooth, because if I had a lot of high spots, it was going to dry thicker in some spots and thinner in others, and that's not a good look. Sorry, I'm looking for my hotel room key that I had this in. My mother used to travel a lot when she was still living, and she would keep all her hotel room keys from her year of travel, wrap them in a rubber band and stick them in my Christmas stocking. It was the best Christmas present ever. All right, so I've smoothed that out. So yeah, there's a little skip right there. That doesn't bother me. It's okay to have one or two, but really I work to have almost no direction showing, smooth everything down so it's as close to a single bead of thickness as I can get. And when it dries, it will dry completely clear. Let's see if I can move those little, there we go. See, I just troweled in a different direction and made those big streaks go away, but there's holes. That's part of the bead gel thing. So the medium will dry clear and tighten down, and you're just gonna see the bead gel because, oops, I dropped what I was trying to show you. That's exactly what happened here. So if you look close, you might see like right there, there's a little drag mark, but look how beautifully clear that dried. So I was very happy with this. I think this is a great project. It's very, very fun. And basically, all you're doing is, the only thing you need to do is have this, set coat clear, and the bead gel. And you print off of your printer. If you want to enhance with the pigments and the colors, you can do that. But seriously, so easy and very price friendly. All right, everybody, I've got bead gel on my elbows. It's time to go home. I know my husband's home waiting for me with dinner, so hopefully you all have had some dinner already. All right, have a good night, everybody, and I will be back tomorrow. I'm not remembering what I have planned for tomorrow. I'd have to look at my list, but I will be back tomorrow. All right, everyone, have a good night. Sprinkle the love. We've got more contests coming up at the end of this month. Oh, before I forget, one more thing. Friendly reminder. I am going on vacation next week. Our online store is still available. Shipping will happen as it always happens, but you probably will not see me on a live during my vacation. So I'm going to go spend a few days, catch a little break. My beloved husband and business partner is going to be taking care of all the shipping. You can still reach me for questions. You can still order directly through the website, or you can order through me. I'll still take care of that. And I will talk to you finally. Good night. I will talk to you tomorrow. Have a good one.